The Missouri hills rolled like gentle waves, a sea of green and gold under the vast sky. It was 1873, and life moved at a slower pace, dictated by the seasons and the needs of the land. Nestled in a small clearing, almost hidden by the trees, sat a simple log cabin. This was Jeremiah Hawthorne's home. Jeremiah, a veteran of the Civil War, had returned to Missouri blind. The war had taken his sight, but it hadn't taken his spirit. He was a tall, strong man, his face etched with the lines of hardship and resilience. His hands, though, were gentle, calloused from years of working the land even before the war. Now, they were his eyes, guiding him through his familiar world. Each morning, Jeremiah would rise before the sun. He knew the cabin intimately, every creak of the floorboards, every draft from the window. He'd start a fire in the hearth, the scent of wood smoke filling the air. Then, he'd make his coffee, carefully measuring the grounds, the aroma a comforting ritual. His days were filled with simple tasks. He tended to his small garden, feeling the textures of the plants, knowing when they needed water or weeding. He chopped wood, the rhythmic swing of the axe a familiar song. He listened to the sounds of the forest, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, the distant howl of a coyote, and in those sounds he found a connection to the world he could no longer see. Jeremiah wasn't entirely alone. He had a loyal dog, a scruffy mutt named Blue, who acted as his guide and companion. Blue was always by his side, nudging him gently when he needed to change direction, alerting him to any approaching strangers. Blue was more than just a dog. He was Jeremiah's friend, his protector, his eyes. Sometimes Jeremiah would sit on his porch, listening to the wind rustling through the trees. He'd remember the war, the sights he had once seen, the horrors he had witnessed. But he didn't dwell on the past. He focused on the present, on the simple beauty of the world around him. He had learned to find peace in his solitude, to appreciate the small things in life. He had learned that even in darkness, there was still light to be found. Jeremiah was a survivor, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. He was a man who had lost everything, but who had found a way to rebuild his life, one day at a time, in the rolling hills of Missouri. The late afternoon sky began to darken with an ominous gray. Jeremiah, sensing the change in the air, guided by Blue, hurried to secure the shutters on the cabin windows. The wind picked up, howling like a banshee, and the first fat raindrops began to fall, splattering against the dry earth. Blue whined, pressing close to Jeremiah's leg, sensing the approaching storm. Soon, the storm unleashed its full fury. Lightning flashed, illuminating the cabin in stark, brief bursts, followed by deafening claps of thunder that shook the very foundations of the small dwelling. The rain came down in sheets, blurring the world outside into an indistinguishable gray mass. Jeremiah sat by the fire, listening to the storm rage, a familiar feeling of isolation washing over him. He was used to being alone, but nights like these amplified the silence. Suddenly, above the roar of the storm, he heard a frantic pounding on the cabin door. Blue barked, his hackles raised. Jeremiah, startled, stood up, his hand reaching for the rifle he kept near the fireplace. "Who is it?" he called out, his voice barely audible above the storm. "Please, help me," a woman's voice cried out, desperate and afraid. "I need shelter." Jeremiah hesitated. He was a cautious man, and he didn't know who was on the other side of the door. But the woman's voice was filled with such genuine fear that he couldn't bring himself to turn her away. He told Blue to stay, and slowly made his way to the door, unlatching the heavy bolt. He pulled the door open a crack, peering out into the storm. The wind and rain lashed at his face, and he could barely see anything. But then, a flash of lightning illuminated a figure standing on the porch. A woman, drenched to the bone, her face pale and drawn. "Please," she begged, her voice trembling. "I have nowhere else to go." Jeremiah, his heart softening, opened the door wider. "Come in," he said, his voice gruff but kind. "Get out of the storm." The woman stumbled inside, shivering uncontrollably. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with dark hair plastered to her face and wide, frightened eyes. She wore a simple dress, torn and muddy, and carried a small, worn satchel. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Thank you for taking me in." Jeremiah closed the door, shutting out the storm. He turned to the woman, his face etched with concern. "What's your name?" he asked. "Beatrick," she replied softly. "Beatrick Morrison." Jeremiah nodded. "I am Jeremiah Hawthorne. Welcome to my home, Beatrick. You're safe now." Beatrick stood just inside the doorway, dripping water onto the wooden floor. She wrapped her arms around herself, tried to ward off the chill. Jeremiah, guided by Blue, moved towards the fireplace. "There should be a blanket in that chest," he said, pointing towards a wooden chest near the hearth. "Get yourself wrapped up. You must be freezing." Beatrick did as she was told, pulling out a thick, woolen blanket. It smelled faintly of cedar and wood smoke, a comforting scent that eased her frayed nerves. She wrapped it tightly around her shoulders, feeling the warmth slowly seep into her bones. "I'll make some coffee," Jeremiah said, already moving towards the stove. "It's not much, but it'll warm you up." He moved with a practiced ease, his blindness not hindering him in the familiar space. Beatrick watched him, impressed by his self-sufficiency. As Jeremiah busied himself with the coffee, Beatrick took a closer look at the cabin. It was small and simple, but clean and well kept. A fire crackled merrily in the hearth, casting a warm glow on the rough-hewn walls. There were a few simple pieces of furniture, a table, a couple of chairs, a bed in the corner, but everything was neat and orderly. It was clear that Jeremiah took pride in his home. Soon, Jeremiah handed her a steaming mug of coffee. "Careful, it's hot," he warned. Beatrick took a sip, the hot liquid burning pleasantly down her throat. "Thank you," she said, her voice still shaky. This is very kind of you." Jeremiah sat down in a chair near the fire, Blue settling at his feet. "It's no trouble," he said. "You look like you needed help. Besides," he added with a wry smile, "it gets lonely here sometimes. It's nice to have some company." A silence fell between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the howling of the wind outside. Beatrick looked at Jeremiah, studying his face. He had a kind face, despite the harsh lines etched by time and hardship. His eyes were clouded over, but there was a warmth in his expression that put her at ease. How did you lose your sight?" Beatrick asked, the question slipping out before she could stop herself. Jeremiah sighed, his face clouding over for a moment. "The war," he said simply. "Lost it at Shiloh." Beatrick nodded, understanding. She knew that the war had taken a heavy toll on many, but she hadn't realized it had touched Jeremiah so deeply. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "It was a long time ago," Jeremiah said, shrugging it off. "I've learned to live with it. It's not the end of the world." Beatrick looked at him, impressed by his resilience. She couldn't imagine what it must be like to lose her sight, but Jeremiah seemed to have found a way to make peace with his disability. "So," Jeremiah said, breaking the silence, "what brings you out on a night like this, Beatrick Morrison?" Beatrick hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. She didn't know Jeremiah, and she was wary of trusting anyone. But she also knew that she couldn't stay silent forever. I'm running away," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm running away from a bad situation." Jeremiah leaned forward, his brow furrowed with concern. "A bad situation? Are you in danger?" Beatrick hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug. "Yes," she said finally, her voice barely audible. I was married. It wasn't a good marriage. He wasn't a good man." She didn't elaborate, but Jeremiah could hear the pain and fear in her voice. He nodded slowly, understanding more than she realized. He had seen the dark side of humanity during the war, and he knew that some men were capable of terrible things. "You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to," he said gently. "But you're safe here. I won't let anyone hurt you." Beatrick looked at him, her eyes searching his face. She saw sincerity and kindness there, and she felt a flicker of hope. "Thank you," she whispered. That means a lot to me. They sat in silence for a few moments, listening to the storm rage outside. Jeremiah found himself drawn to Beatrix's voice. It was soft and melodic, with a hint of sadness that resonated with him. He couldn't see her face clearly in the dim light, but he could sense her spirit, her resilience, her quiet strength. "Where were you headed?" Jeremiah asked, breaking the silence. "Did you have a place in mind?" Beatrix shook her head. "No," she admitted. "I just wanted to get away. I didn't have a plan. I just started walking." Jeremiah frowned. "That's dangerous," he said, "especially for a woman alone. The world can be a harsh place." "I know," Beatrix said, her voice resigned. "But I couldn't stay there any longer. I had to leave, even if it meant facing the unknown." Jeremiah was silent for a moment, considering. He knew that he couldn't just let her wander off into the storm. He had a responsibility to help her, to protect her. "You can stay here," he said finally. "You can stay here as long as you need to. I have plenty of room, and I could use the company." Beatrix looked at him, surprised. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I don't want to impose." "I'm sure," Jeremiah said firmly. "I wouldn't offer if I didn't mean it. Besides," he added with a smile, "maybe you could teach me a thing or two about cooking. My meals are getting a bit repetitive." Beatrix laughed, a genuine laugh that warmed Jeremiah's heart. "I can definitely do that," she said. "I'm a pretty good cook, if I do say so myself." As the storm raged outside, Jeremiah and Beatrix continued to talk, sharing stories and getting to know each other. Jeremiah learned about Beatrix's difficult past, her dreams, and her hopes for the future. Beatrix learned about Jeremiah's experiences in the war, his love for the land, and his quiet acceptance of his blindness. They found solace in each other's company, a connection that transcended their physical differences and their troubled pasts. Jeremiah was touched by Beatrix's vulnerability and her quiet strength. He admired her courage in leaving her old life behind and striking out on her own. He sensed a kindred spirit in her, someone who had also known hardship and loss, but who had refused to give up hope. Beatrix, in turn, was touched by Jeremiah's kindness and his unwavering faith in humanity. She had never met anyone like him before, someone who was so genuinely good and compassionate. She felt safe in his presence, protected and cared for. As the night wore on, the storm began to subside, and the first rays of dawn peeked through the clouds. Jeremiah and Beatrix sat by the fire, exhausted but content. They had found something special in each other, a connection that had the potential to change their lives forever. They both felt a sense of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, they could find happiness together in the rolling hills of Missouri. The next few days passed in a quiet rhythm. The storm had cleared, leaving behind a world washed clean and sparkling in the sunlight. Beatrix, true to her word, helped Jeremiah around the cabin, cooking meals and tending to the garden. She was a quick learner, and soon she was anticipating his needs before he even voiced them. They still talked late into the night, sharing their stories and slowly revealing the deeper wounds of their pasts. Beatrix spoke of her marriage, carefully choosing her words, but Jeremiah could sense the fear and pain that still lingered. She described the controlling nature of her husband, his constant criticism, and the escalating violence that had finally driven her to flee. She spoke of feeling trapped and hopeless, of losing her sense of self. Jeremiah, in turn, shared his experiences in the war. He spoke of the camaraderie he had felt with his fellow soldiers, the bravery he had witnessed, and the horrors he had endured. He described the Battle of Shiloh, the chaos and confusion, the deafening roar of cannons, and a moment when a shell had exploded near him, blinding him in an instant. He spoke of the darkness that had enveloped him, both physically and emotionally, and the long, difficult journey he had taken to find his way back to the light. He didn't dwell on the bitterness or the anger he had once felt. Instead, he focused on the lessons he had learned, the strength he had found within himself, and the importance of appreciating the simple things in life. He spoke of the beauty he still found in the world, even without his sight, the beauty of the sounds of nature, the feel of the earth beneath his feet, and the warmth of the sun on his skin. As they shared their stories, a deep bond formed between them. They understood each other's pain, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. They found comfort in knowing that they were not alone, that someone else had also known hardship and loss, but had still found a way to keep going. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Beatrix asked Jeremiah a question that had been weighing on her mind. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. "Do you ever regret losing your sight?" Jeremiah was silent for a moment, considering. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Sometimes I miss seeing the world, the colors, the faces of the people I love. But then I remember all the things I've gained, the lessons I've learned, the person I've become. And I realize that my blindness has made me stronger, more compassionate, more appreciative of the things that truly matter." He reached out and took Beatrix's hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "I wouldn't trade my experiences," he said, "because they've led me here, to this moment, to you." Beatrix squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for sharing your story with me. It gives me hope that maybe, someday, I can find peace too." Jeremiah smiled. "You will," he said confidently. "I know you will. You're a strong woman, Beatrix. You've already survived so much. You can survive anything." One morning, Beatrix was outside, tending to the chickens when she heard the sound of approaching horses. Her heart leaped in her throat. Could it be him? Had he found her? She froze, her breath catching in her chest. Jeremiah, sensing her fear, came out of the cabin, Blue by his side. "What is it?" he asked, his voice calm but alert. "Horses," Beatrix whispered, her eyes wide with panic. "Someone's coming." Jeremiah listened intently, his head cocked to one side. "How many?" he asked. I don't know," Beatrix stammered. "2, maybe 3. Jeremiah's face hardened. He didn't know who was approaching, but he wasn't going to take any chances. He told Beatrix to go inside the cabin and stay out of sight. But Beatrix protested. "Just do it," he said firmly. "I'll handle this." Beatrix hesitated for a moment, then obeyed, hurrying inside the cabin and peering out through a crack in the shutters. She watched as Jeremiah stood his ground, his rifle held loosely in his hand, Blue growling softly at his side. Soon, 3 men on horseback rode into the clearing. They were rough-looking characters, dressed in dusty clothes and sporting grim expressions. The leader, a burly man with a handlebar mustache, reined in his horse in front of Jeremiah. "You Jeremiah Hawthorne?" he asked, his voice gruff. "I am," Jeremiah replied calmly. "What can I do for you?" "We're looking for a woman," the leader said, his eyes scanning the cabin. "Name of Beatrix Morrison. Heard she might be hiding out around here." Beatrix's heart pounded in her chest. She knew that they were here for her. Jeremiah stood his ground, his face impassive. "I haven't seen anyone fitting that description," he said. "You must have a wrong place." The leader narrowed his eyes, studying Jeremiah's face. "Don't lie to me, old man," he growled. "We know she's here. We're going to search the cabin." Jeremiah raised his rifle slightly, his voice still calm but firm. "You're not going to search anything," he said. "This is my property, and I'm telling you to leave." The leader laughed, a harsh, unpleasant sound. "You in what army?" he sneered. "You're blind, old man. You can't stop us." Jeremiah's eyes may have been blind, but his spirit was not. He stood tall and proud, his voice ringing with conviction. "I may be blind," he said, "but I'm not helpless, and I will protect anyone who seeks shelter in my home. You try to enter that cabin, and you'll regret it." Beatrix watched from inside the cabin, her eyes filled with tears. She couldn't believe that Jeremiah was willing to risk his life for her, a woman he barely knew. The leader hesitated, his eyes flicking from Jeremiah to Blue, who was now baring his teeth and snarling menacingly. He could see that Jeremiah was not bluffing. He was a man of his word, and he was prepared to fight. After a long, tense moment, the leader spat on the ground and reined his horse around. "Fine," he said. "We'll leave, but we'll be back. And when we do, you better not be hiding her." With that, the 3 men turned their horses and rode off, disappearing into the trees. Jeremiah stood there for a long moment, listening to the sound of their horses fading away. Then, he turned and walked back towards the cabin, his face grim. Beatrix ran out of the cabin and threw her arms around him. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you for protecting me." Jeremiah held her close, his hand stroking her hair. "You're safe now," he said softly. "I promised you I would protect you, and I will. I won't let anyone hurt you." In that moment, Beatrix knew that she had found more than just a safe haven in Jeremiah's cabin. She had found a protector, a friend, and maybe, just maybe, something more. After the encounter with the men on horseback, Beatrix was even more determined to help Jeremiah around the farm. She felt a responsibility to contribute, to earn her keep, and to show Jeremiah how grateful she was for his protection. Jeremiah, in turn, was more than willing to accept her help. He had always been fiercely independent, but he knew that he couldn't do everything on his own. Beatrix's presence was a blessing, not only for her companionship, but also for her ability to see what he could not. They began to work together as a team, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. Beatrix became Jeremiah's eyes, guiding him through the fields, describing the landscape, and alerting him to any obstacles in his path. She would tell him where to plant the seeds, where to weed the garden, and where to chop the wood. She would describe the colors of the sunset, the shapes of the clouds, and the beauty of the wildflowers that bloomed in the spring. Jeremiah, in turn, offered Beatrix stability and strength. He taught her how to farm, how to care for the animals, and how to survive in the wilderness. He showed her how to build a fire, how to hunt for food, and how to protect herself from danger. He taught her how to be self-sufficient, how to rely on her own strength, and how to find peace in the simple things in life. As they worked side by side, their bond deepened. They learned to trust each other, to rely on each other, and to support each other through thick and thin. They shared their dreams and their fears, their hopes and their disappointments. They laughed together, they cried together, and they found comfort in each other's arms. Beatrix discovered a newfound sense of purpose in her life. She had always felt lost and aimless, but now she had a reason to get up in the morning, a reason to work hard, and a reason to hope for the future. She found fulfillment in helping Jeremiah, in contributing to the farm, and in building a life for herself in the Missouri hills. Jeremiah, too, found a renewed sense of purpose. He had always felt that his blindness had limited him, that he couldn't be the man he once was. But Beatrix showed him that he was still capable of great things, that he still had something to offer the world. She helped him to see that his blindness was not a weakness, but a strength, that had made him more compassionate, more understanding, and more appreciative of the things that truly mattered. One afternoon, as they were working in the garden, Beatrix stopped and looked at Jeremiah, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "Thank you for everything. You've given me a new life, a new hope." Jeremiah smiled and reached out to take her hand. "You've given me a new life too, Beatrix," he said. "You've shown me that even in darkness, there is still light to be found. And you've taught me that true beauty lies not in what we see, but in what we feel." As they stood there, holding hands in the garden, surrounded by the beauty of nature, they both knew that something special was happening between them. They were falling in love, not with their eyes, but with their hearts. They were falling in love with each other's souls, with each other's strengths, and with each other's vulnerabilities. They were falling in love with the idea of a future together, a future filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a better tomorrow. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. As the seasons changed, so did the relationship between Jeremiah and Beatrix. Their friendship deepened, their trust grew, and their affection blossomed into love. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic explosion of passion, but a slow, gentle unfolding, like a flower opening to the sun. There were small moments of tenderness that hinted at their growing feelings. The way Jeremiah's hand would linger on Beatrix as he helped her down from the wagon. The way Beatrix's voice would soften when she spoke to Jeremiah, her words filled with warmth and admiration. The way they would steal glances at each other across the dinner table, their eyes meeting in a silent acknowledgement of their shared connection. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Jeremiah reached out and took Beatrix's hand. "Beatrix," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. I care about you a great deal." Beatrix squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with happiness. "I care about you too, Jeremiah," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Jeremiah turned to face her, his blind eyes searching for her gaze. "I know I'm not much to look at," he said, his voice tinged with sadness. "I'm an old blind man. I don't have much to offer." Beatrix cupped his face in her hands, her eyes filled with love. "Don't say that," she said fiercely. "You're not old, and you're not blind. You're the kindest, most compassionate man I've ever met. And you have so much to offer. You've given me a home, a purpose, and a reason to believe in myself again." She leaned in and kissed him gently on the lips, a soft, tender kiss that spoke volumes. Jeremiah's heart leaped in his chest, and he returned the kiss with equal passion. From that moment on, their relationship changed. They were no longer just friends or companions. They were lovers, partners, and soulmates. They shared everything with each other, their hopes, their dreams, their fears, and their vulnerabilities. They supported each other through thick and thin, and they found strength in each other's arms. They spent their days working on the farm, their hands touching as they planted seeds, harvested crops, and cared for the animals. They spent their evenings sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, and sharing stories. They spent their nights in each other's arms, finding comfort and solace in their love. One night, as they lay in bed together, Beatrix whispered to Jeremiah, "I love you, Jeremiah Hawthorne. I love you more than words can say." Jeremiah held her close, his heart overflowing with love. "I love you too, Beatrix Morrison," he whispered back. "I never thought I would find love again, but you've shown me that anything is possible. You've shown me that true love is blind, that it sees beyond the surface and touches the soul." As they lay there in each other's arms, listening to the sounds of the night, they both knew that they had found something special, something rare, and something precious. They had found love in the most unexpected of places, in the rolling hills of Missouri, in the heart of a blind veteran and a woman with a troubled past. They had found love that transcended physical sight, that healed old wounds, and that promised a future filled with happiness and hope. Their newfound happiness, however, was not without its challenges. One day, a new family arrived in the nearby town, the Millers. They were hard-working and friendly, but they also possessed a certain nosiness that made Beatrix uneasy. Mrs. Miller, in particular, seemed overly interested in Beatrix's past and her relationship with Jeremiah. "So, Beatrix," Mrs. Miller said one afternoon, as they were both buying supplies at the general store, "Jeremiah's a good man, but it must be hard, living way out here with no other folks around. And him being, well, you know." She trailed off, her eyes flicking towards Jeremiah, who was waiting patiently outside with Blue. Beatrix bristled. "Jeremiah is the best man I know," she said firmly. "And we're perfectly happy here. We don't need anyone else." Mrs. Miller raised an eyebrow, her lips pursed. "Well, I'm just saying, a young woman like you shouldn't be tied down to an old blind man. You deserve someone who can give you a real life, a family, children." Beatrix's anger flared. "Jeremiah gives me everything I need," she retorted. "He gives me love, respect, and a safe place to call home. That's more than I ever had before." She turned and walked away, leaving Mrs. Miller standing there with a smug look on her face. Later that day, Beatrix confided in Jeremiah about her conversation with Mrs. Miller. Jeremiah listened patiently, his face etched with concern. "She's just jealous," he said finally. "She sees how happy we are, and she can't stand it. Don't let her get to you, Beatrix. What matters is what we feel for each other." Beatrix nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Mrs. Miller's words had planted a seed of doubt in her mind. She knew that Jeremiah loved her, but she also knew that he couldn't give her everything she might want in life. He couldn't give her children, he couldn't give her the chance to travel, and he couldn't protect her from the judgment of others. That night, as they lay in bed together, Beatrix couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind racing with doubts and fears. "What's wrong?" Jeremiah asked, sensing her unease. "You're restless." Beatrix hesitated, then poured out her heart to him, telling him about her conversation with Mrs. Miller and the doubts that had been plaguing her. Jeremiah listened patiently, his hand stroking her hair. When she was finished, he pulled her close and held her tight. "I know I can't give you everything you might want," he said softly, "but I can give you my love, my loyalty, and my unwavering support. And I promise to always do everything I can to make you happy." He paused, then added, "But if you ever decide that you want something more, something I can't give you, I won't stand in your way. I love you too much to hold you back from your dreams." Beatrix's eyes filled with tears. She knew that Jeremiah was being sincere, that he truly wanted her to be happy, even if it meant letting her go. "I don't want anything more," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I have everything I need right here with you. I love you, Jeremiah Hawthorne, and I don't want to be with anyone else." She snuggled closer to him, finding comfort in his arms. The external threat of Mrs. Miller's judgment had tested their bond, but had also strengthened their love and reaffirmed their commitment to each other. They knew that their life together wouldn't be easy, but they were willing to face any challenge, as long as they had each other. The following spring, as the wildflowers bloomed and the birds sang their sweet melodies, Jeremiah knew that it was time. He had been thinking about it for months, carefully planning the perfect moment to ask Beatrix to be his wife. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Jeremiah took Beatrix's hand in his. "Beatrix," he said softly, his voice trembling with emotion. "You know how much I love you, how much you mean to me." Beatrix smiled, her eyes filled with love. "I do, Jeremiah," she said. "I love you too." Jeremiah took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. "I can't imagine my life without you," he said. "You brought so much joy, so much light into my world. You've shown me that even in darkness, there is still beauty to be found. And you've taught me what it means to love and be loved in return." He paused, then continued, "Beatrix Morrison, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Will you spend the rest of your life with me, here in the rolling hills of Missouri?" Beatrix's eyes filled with tears, her heart overflowing with happiness. "Yes, Jeremiah," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you. I can't imagine anything I would want more." Jeremiah smiled, relief washing over him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a simple silver ring. "I know it's not much," he said, "but it's all I have to offer. It's my grandmother's ring. She gave it to me before she passed away, and she told me to give it to the woman I loved." He took the ring out of the box and slipped it onto Beatrix's finger. It fit perfectly. "It's beautiful," Beatrix said, her voice filled with awe. "Thank you, Jeremiah." They embraced, their hearts filled with love and happiness. They knew that their life together wouldn't be perfect, but they were willing to face any challenge, as long as they had each other. A few weeks later, they were married in a small, intimate ceremony in their cabin. They didn't have many friends or neighbors, but the few that were close to their hearts. Mrs. Miller, surprisingly, came and offered her congratulations, a hint of genuine happiness in her eyes. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Jeremiah and Beatrix exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other for the rest of their lives. They exchanged rings, symbolizing their commitment to each other, and they sealed their vows with a kiss that spoke of their deep and abiding love. As they stood there, hand in hand, surrounded by the people they loved, they both knew that they had found something truly special. They had found love in the most unexpected of places, and they had built a life together based on trust, respect, and unwavering support. Their marriage was a symbol of hope and resilience, a testament to the power of love to heal and transform. They were ready to face the future together, hand in hand, knowing that as long as they had each other, they could overcome anything. The years that followed were filled with hard work, simple joys, and a deep, abiding love that only grew stronger with time. Jeremiah and Beatrix built a life together on the farm, a life filled with laughter, companionship, and the unwavering support of one another. They expanded the garden, growing a wide variety of vegetables and fruits that they shared with their neighbors. They raised chickens, cows, and pigs, providing themselves with fresh eggs, milk, and meat. They worked side by side, each contributing their unique skills and talents to the success of the farm. Beatrix became known throughout the community for her delicious cooking and her warm hospitality. She often invited friends and neighbors over for meals, filling the cabin with laughter and the aroma of freshly baked bread. She also volunteered her time at the local church, helping with community events and offering support to those in need. Jeremiah, in turn, became a respected member of the community, known for his wisdom, his kindness, and his unwavering honesty. He often served as a mediator in disputes, helping to resolve conflicts and bring people together. He also taught the local children about farming, about nature, and about the importance of hard work and perseverance. They faced challenges, of course. There were droughts that threatened their crops, storms that damaged their property, and illnesses that tested their strength. But through it all, they remained steadfast in their love and commitment to each other. They supported each other through the tough times, and they celebrated their successes together. As the years passed, they longed for a family of their own. They tried to have children, but it was not to be. They eventually came to accept that it was not in God's plan for them, but they never stopped cherishing the love that they shared. Instead, they opened their hearts and their home to others. They fostered several children over the years, providing them with a safe and loving environment. They became surrogate grandparents to the children in the community, attending their school plays, cheering them on at their sporting events, and offering them guidance and support. Their love extended beyond their own home and touched the lives of many. They created a community of love and support, a haven for those who needed it most. One day, as they were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, Beatrix turned to Jeremiah, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We've built a good life together, Jeremiah," she said softly. "A life filled with love, laughter, and purpose." Jeremiah smiled and took her hand in his. "We have," he said, "and it's all thanks to you, Beatrix. You've shown me that even in the face of adversity, it's possible to find happiness and fulfillment. You've given me a life beyond my wildest dreams." They sat there in silence for a moment, their hearts overflowing with love and gratitude. They had faced many challenges in their lives, but they had always overcome them, together. They had built a life together based on love, trust, and unwavering support, a life that was a testament to the power of the human spirit. And they knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything the future might hold. Years later, as they sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the rolling hills, their hair grayed and their faces lined with wrinkles, Jeremiah turned to Beatrix, his heart filled with love and gratitude. "You know," he said softly, "I never thought I would find happiness again after losing my sight. I thought my life was over." Beatrix squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with tears. "You were wrong, Jeremiah," she said. "Your life was just beginning." Jeremiah smiled. "You showed me that true sight isn't about seeing with your eyes," he said. "It's about seeing with your heart. It's about seeing the beauty in the world, even in the darkness. And it's about seeing the good in people, even when they don't see it in themselves." He paused, then continued, "You taught me that love is blind, that it doesn't matter what someone looks like, or where they come from, or what they've done in the past. All that matters is what's in their heart." Beatrix smiled, her heart swelling with love. "And you taught me that it's never too late to start over," she said. "You gave me a second chance at life, a chance to escape my past and build a new future. You showed me that it's possible to find happiness, even after experiencing great pain and loss." They sat there in silence for a moment, their hands clasped together, their hearts connected. They had faced many challenges in their lives, but they had always overcome them together. They had built a life together based on love, trust, and unwavering support, a life that was a testament to the power of the human spirit. Their love was a beacon of hope, a symbol of resilience, and a reminder that true beauty lies within. It was a love that transcended physical limitations, that healed old wounds, and that promised a future filled with happiness and peace. Their story, the story of a blind veteran and a woman with a troubled past, became a legend in the rolling hills of Missouri. It was a story that was told and retold, passed down from generation to generation. It was a story about the power of love to heal and transform, about the importance of seeing beyond the surface, and about the enduring strength of the human heart. And as the sun set on their long and beautiful life together, Jeremiah and Beatrice knew that they had created something truly special, something that would last.